All right, everyone, welcome in to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, episode 33. This episode is on September 29th, 2022. I'm Nicholas Hill, always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, in the United States. Finally got this new awesome checker kneeling background. Not sure if it's from this past weekend or not. Joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, we were just talking about this before the show. I'm so jealous that we were not in Knoxville last weekend.
I know,
Super
man.
jealous.
I know. It's like Knoxville was the center of the college football world, and we're going to talk about the game. There's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot to discuss. But in terms of atmosphere, it was electric. It was you know uh, the best crowd I think I have seen. Jealous I was not there. I'm jealous I wasn't covered. I guess you're feeling that well, but you know, I guess it's what a day. What a day for Tennessee football, and I think it says a lot about the path the Tennessee is going. And behind me is the Corinthians Stadium. There was also a lot of things happened on the weekend. We're gonna talk about that as well. We're gonna start, of course, with our 4-0 number 8 team in the country, the Vols. They got a really good win that I think was more hard than it should have been, I guess.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, with 5 minutes left to go in the game, I mean, it was 38-21, right? Like, the Vols dominated the second half. That just some sloppy play by the defense the last two drives. And then I would say potentially a questionable decision to go for it on fourth down, up 38-27. I think they were in position to kick a field goal there. I think they should have kicked it there to make it 41-27, just to make yourself just a little more safe. But I mean, at the same time, your defense wasn't playing well, so I understand why you go for that. Because I mean, your offense had been perfect the entire second half, and it really goes to the performance of Hendon Hooker. And I've been watching Tennessee football since 2006. I don't remember the glory days of the '90s. I don't remember Peyton Manning. I've seen highlights and stuff. Um, in terms of games I've watched live, that was the best quarterback performance I've ever seen from a Tennessee quarterback, from Hendon Hooker. I mean, what he did on Saturday was stuff of legends. I mean, it's stuff that Tennessee fans are going to be talking about in 20 to 30 years from now. I mean, ending a losing streak against Florida while putting up, over 450 yards of total offense. I mean, it was just unbelievable what he did. And he was in total control. And, he was on it the entire time. But, there was a point in the second half where he got driven to the ground, and it looked like his shoulder was hurt. But he came out the next drive and drove the team down 99 yards. And from there was just on point, was on fire, made all the right decisions. I mean, you think about it, for 4 games this year, Hendon Hooker has no interceptions. In his entire career at Tennessee, he has 3. Now, through, what is it? I had 13, this is 17 total games, 15 career starts. He has 45 total touchdowns to those 3 interceptions. I mean, find me another quarterback in the country with a touchdown interception ratio like that. You can't. Bryce Young doesn't. Stetson Bennett doesn't. C.J. Stroud doesn't. Hendon Hooker, to me, for what he provides to his team relatively, is the best quarterback in the country. And should be the front runner for the Heisman.
I mean, he has basically 2 games to prove it against 2 quarterbacks that you mentioned. Georgia and Alabama, and so probably those games are gonna kind of solidify or not if Hendon Hooker can join, can like be a front runner on the Heisman conversation. I know also Kentucky quarterback has also been performing really well. Anthony Richardson had a really good game. Finally throw for not only 1 but 2 touchdowns, had 1 interception. But I think Hendon Hooker endurance, I think, describes him the best. As you said, he was dealing with which might be an injury. He was dealing with stuff on the off the field, but then he still went on, carried the team with 99 yards, and got a touchdown. So I think it shows a lot about this team. And But I think the conversation is, do you think Hendon Hooker can be better than Joshua Dobbs? Because the last really good quarterback and the last quarterback that got the win versus Florida for the Tennessee Volunteers was Joshua Dobbs. So the conversation is, I think, can Hendon Hooker do a better job than Joshua Dobbs?
I honestly think he's already better than Dobbs. I mean, no disrespect to Joshua Dobbs, but he's a better downfield thrower than Dobbs was. He's just as good of a runner. And I think he's a better decision maker than Dobbs is. Dobbs had some interceptions, was prone to some really, really off games. Hendon Hooker consistently, every game this year has been just solid. Now, he had a rocky start at Pittsburgh, but got it going from the second quarter on. Um, I think that Hooker at this point has definitely surpassed Dobbs. And now the question is, where can Hooker place himself in the all-time UT rank of quarterbacks? Can he approach the like of a Peyton Manning? Can he approach you like the Casey Clausens and the Condrich Holloways? I think that's the type, and T. Martin that's the type of company that I think Hendon Hooker is going to leave UT with.
I think,
As long as he stays healthy and keeps on producing the way he is.
I mean, T. Martin and Peyton Manning got titles, especially, T. Martin was a quarterback that got the national title. So I think, for Hendon Hooker to be in that group, he at least had to get to Atlanta. And I know it's going to be a hard path to get there. Georgia doesn't seem to slow it down. And probably we all know it's going to be a Georgia Alabama game in December in Atlanta. But if at least the Vols can get to like a near six or like a really good bowl, better than Music City Bowl, probably he's in the path. But I think he has to win not only games, but to win at least the division, or can get close to winning the conference. I think should be like a good measure in terms of success for Hendon Hooker to be in that group that you mentioned, T. Martin and Peyton Manning, because those were two really successful quarterbacks, not only individually, but in terms of titles for the Vols.
I mean, to me, definitely LSU, Kentucky are the swing games because they're going to be underdogs against Bama and Georgia. But I mean, I think Bama, to me at least, looks a lot more vulnerable. I mean, look at the way they played at Texas. They did not look very good there. That offensive line was not very good. Bill O'Brien is prone to making terrible offensive calls, although our defense has a lot to be desired. But you have to give a lot of credit to Florida. Like Anthony Richardson by far played his best game of the year on Saturday. He was single-handedly keeping Florida in it. And in a way, I do have to credit Billy Napier for some of the aggressive calls on fourth down. But to criticize Napier, I think the thing that single-handedly won Tennessee this game by the end, outside of the play of Hendon Hooker in the offense, why in the world did Billy Napier go for 2 when he was down 11? Why? I mean, think about the math here. If you get it, it's 38-29. It's a 9-point game, but it's still a 2-possession game. And because he missed it on 38-27, then when they score again, it's 38-33. He has to go for 2. And Florida, and think about what Florida was. They were at the 35-yard line at the end of the game on that last play. They could have tried for a very long field goal, and knowing Florida's luck in this Tennessee series, they probably could have made it. So, and Billy Napier kind of screwed himself out of a chance to really win this game, I feel like, with that 2-point conversion. But I thought overall that some of the decision-making, the aggressiveness was really good, considering that they were major underdogs. And, Anthony Richardson had a lot to do with that, and our poor secondary play.
Yeah, I think he wanted to take the risk, as he said. I think he tries to explain that when you're on a road environment, you wanted to win in regular time and not go to overtime. So he wanted to get the win right now. That's why he took the risk. But but there were teams that came to Knoxville and won in overtime. BYU is a lot that comes to my mind. But nevertheless, he was aggressive. If he converted those 2-point converters, everybody would have praised him, say, "Oh, how bold he is!" He's a risk taker. But it didn't went through, so everybody criticized him.
I guess you're right. I mean, that is the nature of the beast. I felt like he didn't set up his team for success. I mean, And I think Anthony Richardson at the end deserved better. Like he deserved a chance to get into field goal range and not for a touchdown, at least from an objective point of view. Now, as a Tennessee guy, I'm super glad he made that decision because that helped us at the end. You just have to defend the goal line and not have to worry about them getting the field goal range. But man, I'll never understand that decision. I mean, I guess I get the aggressiveness, but I'll be very curious to see if he brings that aggressiveness to other games this year. Is he going to be that aggressive when he plays Georgia, when he plays Texas A&M? I feel like if he tries that stuff against the Bulldogs, he's going to get ran out of Jacksonville, because I feel like Georgia's defense is not going to let them, do that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think he wanted to try probably something spicy, but that's true. Like the fans are not gonna cut it if he tries to, those strategies with the Alabama, with Texas A&M, and even especially Georgia on neutral site on a team that has one of the best defenses in the country.
Yeah, in terms of Tennessee, what I guess your expectation should be like a 9-3, 10-2 at this point. I think 10-2 easily gets you into the New Year's Six Bowl. Obviously, if you want to go beyond that, you'll have to beat Bama or Georgia at least. If you beat Georgia and go 11-1, that wins you the division. If you beat Bama but lose to Georgia at 11-1, you probably don't win the division. But just in theory, I don't think this is going to happen. But would an 11-1 Tennessee, let's say the only loss is to Georgia, but we beat Bama, we beat everyone else. Let's say Georgia goes to the SEC title game. Could 11-1 Tennessee get into the playoff?
Only if Georgia beats Bama. It will be the Georgia Auburn 2017 scenario. Do you remember that?
It would be, yes. Yes.
It will be the same exact scenario. So then we all have to be rooting for Georgia. Then probably Tennessee can sneak in a fourth. It will be the same scenario. Because if then Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC title game, then Georgia will go number 4, and I think Bama will go number 1. So that's probably the only scenario that I can see.
Yeah, I mean, the other team, too, that could play a way into that scenario is Kentucky. Think about it. What if they go 11-1? Their only loss is to Georgia. They say they beat Ole Miss this week. They beat everyone else. They come into Neyland and beat Tennessee. Could 11-1 Kentucky get that same – like, who would have the better resume, 11-1 Tennessee or 11-1 Kentucky? Because I think Tennessee would, because think about it, Kentucky would have beaten Ole Miss on the road. Tennessee would have beaten Alabama. And then if you look at the non-conference schedules, Kentucky's toughest game, no offense, Jason, if you're watching, is Louisville. Well, Tennessee's was Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is a better team than Louisville. So I think Tennessee's resume would be better than Kentucky's at both.
But only this will happen if Tennessee's only loss is to actually Kentucky, and then Tennessee runs the schedule pretty much defeating everyone else, especially the number 1 Georgia, number 2 Alabama.
Oh, so you're talking about like if Vols go 11-1 and the loss to Kentucky?
No, that's what I'm asking. Because it's comparing 11-1.
I don't think is that scenario even possible? I mean, could you imagine a world where
it is. I mean, if Kentucky only loses to Georgia, which it's plausible, and Tennessee only loses to actually Kentucky, which I think that's more unlikely, but it's still a chance. Both teams can end up 11-1.
Then Georgia would also be at 11-1. I would imagine in this scenario as well, because if Kentucky's only lost, or Georgia's only lost to Tennessee.
Yeah.
So what would happen then?
and who will be the division winner? Because all 3 teams will be 11-1, and each one defeat each other. Like Kentucky beats Tennessee, Tennessee beats Georgia, and Georgia beats Kentucky.
I mean, because I know the Big 12 had this situation. 2008, Texas, Oklahoma, Texas Tech all ended up 11-1, and Oklahoma ended up going to the Big 12 title game because they were the highest ranked team. So I don't know if that's what the SEC would do in this scenario, but I can't remember a situation like that ever occurring in the SEC. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think Georgia happens to be the better team the best team, and I think they will beat both Georgia and or Tennessee and Kentucky. Um, but obviously, they're going to have to fight for it. Both of those games will be wars. I'd happen to think Tennessee has a better shot at beating Georgia. If the game was in Neyland, I would really think we'd have a shot at beating Georgia, a really decent shot at defeating Georgia. But I do happen to think that Georgia, at least so far, has looked like the best team to me, even though they looked kind of suspect Saturday. I mean, they didn't play their best at all against Kent State, but I'm going to chalk that up to just them kind of overlooking an inferior opponent.
Yeah, and also, I think Kentucky has a better shot to be an 11-1 because their only highest ranked team they will face until the end of the season is Georgia. Up until now, I know a lot of things can happen. Even Kentucky can, have an upset. But it's even funnier. I imagine John Calipari's face, because one of the things that probably is fueling Kentucky football, coaches and players, is what John Calipari says, that Kentucky is not a football school. They probably put this on their locker room, be like, let's, people in this school don't believe us.
I know. Well, I mean, they have a huge game this weekend at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss, to me, as a question mark. Ole Miss has played nobody for the first month of the season. Their best win is Tulsa, and Tulsa has one of the best passing offenses in the country, but still, I mean, it's Tulsa, right? Your P5 opponent was Georgia Tech, who just fired their head coach, and is probably, if not the worst Power 5 team, one of the top 3 Power 5. Maybe Colorado is worse. But Ole Miss has not played a great team until now.
Yeah, it's going to be their first SEC game. They haven't played any SEC opponents up until now.
If I'm correct, I believe their first 4 opponents were it was something like, it was an FCS team, a lower G5 team. Then they played
Troy, then
Central Arkansas,
then Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and now Tulsa.
Yeah, so that was an insanely weak non-conference schedule. I mean, how many points would Tennessee have scored with that non-con? I mean, would have ran through.
They Lane Kiffin is like, they ran out of their non-conference on their first 4 weeks, so now it's going to be an all SEC schedule.
Did you see where Lane Kiffin was complaining about his fans?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said that he's upset with how the fans weren't showing up for these lower classification schools, but how he's gone over it and that he's just focused on the games. I think Lane Kiffin, just watch, if Auburn fires Brian Harsin, which I think is very possible, I think Lane Kiffin's going to leave. I think this is going to be it for him in Oxford.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sad that Auburn is running coach after coach after coach. Because
they're turning into Tennessee from 10 years ago.
Not only 10 years ago, recently, Tennessee run, because from when Lane Kiffin left up until now, Tennessee run through 4 coaches, if we include the interim head coach by the end of 2017.
Yeah, because after Kiffin, we had Dooley, Butch.
Then we had the interim head coach.
Then you had Pruitt.
Yeah.
And so 4 coaches. A rough decade. And the thing with Auburn is the booster situation is horrible. Those boosters want such tight control of the ship. I mean, there's a reason why their AD just pieced out and left. And then you remember John Curry reached out and congratulated, what was his name, Alan Green, about him leaving Auburn because of just how meddling the boosters are in Auburn. And I think that's going to make it really hard for them to go out there and get any coach because their expectations are unrealistic. You're a second-tier program in a state that's not that big in Alabama. I mean, that Tide are right now probably the best dynasty in all college football with probably the greatest coach of all time in Nick Saban. You have beaten them more than any team really in recent memory. I mean, Auburn's beaten Nick Saban, 3-4 times? That's way more than anyone else has. Georgia's only defeated them once. Clemson's defeated them, twice? I mean, Auburn has more success against Alabama than any other team in the country.
And Auburn had one really clutch games. Ken Newton's year, they got the win. The 2017 Davis 100-yard touchdown. So it's all funny. Alabama had more success than Auburn, but the Auburn fans hold more memorable Iron Bowl games than Alabama fans.
Absolutely. And I never understood why they ran off Gus Malzahn to begin with. I mean, I understand the dude wasn't perfect. I get that he lost some games that he shouldn't have. Like 2018 Tennessee comes to mind. Like we should not have won that game. Auburn that year would have beaten Tennessee 8 out of 10 times. Just we got them on a good day for Tennessee. But still, I think, I mean, every team's going to go through ups and downs unless you're a dynasty. And Auburn was one of those teams that I think should have accepted the place that they were in. And, understand that it's going to, that you can only do so much. And by the way, just a quick side note here Dolphins and Bengals has kicked off. It looks like Joe Mixon just scored a touchdown for the Bengals on the first drive of the game. So Cincinnati takes an early lead on Miami on Thursday Night Football.
I guess in Cincinnati, because I guess this game wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't down in Miami.
Oh no! Well, Miami itself is fine. And oh yeah, we should have probably mentioned at the top of the show. Definitely our thoughts and prayers with everyone affected by Hurricane Ian. Just horrific. I mean, I've had friends and family down there affected by this. Unfortunately, at this point, they're all accounted for at this point, which is
my family actually lives there in Central Florida. My dad lives in Sarasota County, and my brother lives in St. Pete. My parents are in vacation in California, so they're fine. And my brother went to Orlando with his girlfriend, so they're both fine. They're both okay. I hope their houses are fine. But
from what I understand, the Tampa area, like the immediate Tampa area, is fine because it was north of the eye wall, but the area around Fort Myers, Naples, the area just south of Tampa, there in southwestern Florida, that's what got hit really, really hard. That's where Ian came in and made landfall, and that's where the storm surge came in. So that's like, especially like the Fort Myers, especially that seems to be ground zero for all the destruction from this hurricane. So just a very, very unfortunate situation.
Yeah, definitely. I know Brazil is very fortunate to kind of don't have this weather catastrophes, but definitely there's a lot of Brazilians affected there because there's a huge community down in Central Florida. My parents and my brother included, but that's true. Thoughts and prayers for the all affected in the hurricane Ian. But I guess
Yeah, and also just to mention too, real quick, due to Ian as well, there's been some movement with college football as well. For example, the Gamecocks, so South Carolina's playing tonight because Ian's expected to make landfall tomorrow night in South Carolina. So they're expecting they won't be able to play Saturday. So South Carolina's playing South Carolina State right now. Gamecocks up 15-0 late in the second quarter. And I believe that Central Florida, UCF moved their game to Sunday, and so did the Gators as well. So Central Florida and the Gators will both play Sunday afternoon. Home games down in Florida, and they should be fine because Orlando and Gainesville relatively aren't as bad. But I know there's some flooding in Orlando from all the rain. But obviously, since they're inland, they don't get all the storm surge. But anyway, obviously, just keep those folks in your prayers, and definitely they're going to need some help. So if you can, definitely try to reach out and provide something.
And also, quick update on the Brazilian side. Big game of the second division. Vasco and Londrina, the team from Rio, fighting for the promotion, facing one of their closest teams on the table. Is fourth position Vasco versus sixth position Londrina. 3 points dividing the two teams. Should be interesting game. Vasco, big runner up in the FIFA World Cup, Club World Cup in 1998, won the Libertadores. Big, was bought actually by an American conglomerate called 777 Group, which also I think they own Genoa. I don't know if they own any sports team in America, but I know they're an American group that now owns Vasco da Gama.
Yeah, and that's the John Tester guy, right?
No. That's another. That's no. That's That's Botafogo. That's Botafogo. That's another guy. This is 7-7 Partners. 7-7 Partners. They I think they run their multi-club ownership. I know they own Genoa in Italy, but they are from Miami. They are based in Miami. They own Sevilla in Spain, Genoa in Italy, and now Vasco da Gama in Brazil. But I don't think they own any sports team in America. But they are Miami-based, alternative investment firm that acquires ownerships in football clubs, and now they own Vasco da Gama. The fans are really excited, but this game is like a do or die. They have to win in order, I guess, this investment to kind of work. Because imagine like your ownership group buys the team and they don't get promoted first division, probably kind of makes investing a little harder. But big game tonight also here in Brazilian second division. But back to college football. I mean, I like those scenarios in terms of college football playoffs. I mean, the top 10 I think is very accurate per se. I know there's a lot of SEC, but should we, how about the Big Ten? Ohio State and Michigan, number 3 and number 4. And again, a lot of people are doubting, Jim Harbaugh. And again, he's giving the point that Michigan is again is in the top 4, but he again will have to beat Ohio State and now in Columbus to get to the college football playoffs.
Yeah, I need to see Michigan against a really good team. And Maryland was by far the best team they've played, and Maryland tested them, and Maryland is decent, but they're not good. Ohio State. I don't think they're not even Penn. I think Penn State, to me, has looked more impressive than Michigan. Penn State has played tougher competition. What they did at Auburn is way more impressive than anything Michigan's done. I would not be shocked if here in a couple of weeks Penn State defeated Michigan.
And Michigan has a really hard test. Iowa on the road is always tricky. Always tricky. I remember
If they had an offense, it would be. If Iowa had an offense.
Yeah, but it's always a hard environment anyway. Remember when number 3, I think it was number 2 or number 4, Penn State got smacked there a couple of years ago.
Michigan's lost there in the past.
Yeah. So it's a hard environment always. But you said, Iowa is not the same as it was in the past, especially in terms of offense. But
I'll say this though, their defense is still really good as well. That defense is really good. And just kind of just looking at the rest of college football real quick. I don't know if you had any other games you want to talk about from last week. There wasn't a lot of surprises. I think the best game outside of Tennessee Florida probably was the best game outside of maybe Clemson Wake Forest, which that was an amazing game. Clemson's defense looks really suspect, but I don't know if you could just tie that up to Wake Forest's offense though.
I mean, Oregon State give a scare to USC. They were up by 4 in the up until the fourth quarter when USC strike late on Williamson Addis touchdown. But this Lincoln Riley's team, everybody was praising, but they got a little scared by Oregon State. But they're gonna have a really hard test coming up, in a couple of weeks when they, I think, face. Go ahead.
Yeah, they go to Utah, I believe, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so they go to Utah, and also they face Notre Dame by the end of the year. So I think if they ran through his schedule, which is possible, they might, be in the contender for the college football playoffs. But I don't know if the committee is gonna look for, how they're gonna see a Pac-12 team in this balance, because probably Pac-12 has been out of the playoff, conversation since 2017. They've not been. But if I mean, do you think this Lincoln Riley team can have a chance in the college football playoff, at least making it?
If USC is undefeated, they're in the playoff. USC is one of those brands that if they're undefeated, they're in. Like Notre Dame. Like if they're 12-0, Notre Dame's in. If Bama's 12-0, they're in. USC, I understand Pac-12 isn't great, but if they're 12-0, they're in. Like the college football playoff committee. We know these are humans. These are people who are desperate for a West Coast team to be in the playoff, especially a team like USC. I mean, USC would capture a lot of fans west of the Mississippi again. Like I really think that an undefeated USC would be in over like an undefeated Oklahoma State, even if undefeated Oklahoma State's more deserving. Because I think Oklahoma State would have a much tougher schedule, just because I think branding. I think USC will get that nod because they are the Trojans. They are one of the most successful college football programs of all time.
Yeah, that's true. And you said the committee is made out of humans, and they might have some agendas, but especially, I mean, but that's the only way. If probably the not having a tougher schedule, like Ohio State and Michigan will face each other. Bama and Georgia, eventually, if they run through their regular season schedule, are going to face each other in the playoffs. So the scenario is, let's say, Georgia wins, the SEC championship, goes undefeated. Bama has only one loss. Same happens to, let's say, Ohio State beats Michigan, goes undefeated. Michigan 11-1, and then you have USC 12-0. And also Clemson, let's say, go undefeated. So do you think USC will get, let's say, the third spot over a one-loss Michigan and one-loss Bama?
Ooh, with an undefeated USC, I think they would. I think they'd get over Michigan, but not Bama.
So it'll be like Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, and then USC.
If they're all undefeated, yes. I really feel like if USC is undefeated and sitting there undefeated in the year, the committee's going to make sure they're in.
Because that's a very likely scenario. That's the likeliest scenario that we probably talk during our pod.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Will Clemson be undefeated though? I mean, they had play a top 10 NC State this week. And that defense looks very suspect now. NC State does not have Wake Forest's offense, but still they have a lot better. NC State has a lot better defense. And DJ Ujalele, even though he's been playing better, we still haven't really seen him play good against a really good defense yet. So I'm very curious to see if Ujalele shows up and plays well against the Wolfpack this week.
Oh, yeah. Another shout out to all the people from Murfreesboro. What a win by Middle Tennessee in Miami.
Oh my God, yes.
Hurricanes.
Yeah, how about the Blue Raiders? I mean, just seeing the scoreline during the Vols game was insane. Like, when I was looking at Twitter during the commercial breaks, like, oh wow, MTSU scored again. I'm just wondering what in the world is going on in Miami. Mario Cristobal, yikes! You better get those recruits in soon and fast.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to run out of patience down there. I mean, is Miami on the verge too of just becoming Tennessee as well for the past couple of years? Because I feel like they're almost a situation at Auburn where, like, they swung for the fence with Cristobal, and if this doesn't work out with Cristobal, I mean, who's it going to work out with at Miami? I mean, that's a loss you cannot have if you're Mario Cristobal.
Probably those losses, especially, the Texas A&M game. Okay, it's a still really good team. Jimbo Fisher, is getting it back after that upset versus App State, but the Middle Tennessee game is one of the games that you should win. There are probably a lot of recruits that were there on a visit, saw that game, and are going to think twice, because those are the kind of games that you want to bring recruits, you want to kind of show off your team, got a big win, have a good crowd, but, that didn't happen. So, and in terms of patience, probably this start made the fans and the people involved in the decision athletic office in the Hurricanes probably are not going to wait 4 years, probably only 2 years now. They're going to want to see result by Cristobal.
I think one of the big problems with Miami too is their home field advantage sucks. Like, no one goes to Hard Rock Stadium for their games. I mean, they don't have their own stadium. The stadium's 30 miles away from campus. I mean, literally, Tyler Van Dyke, their quarterback, on a TikTok said I like playing on the road more because at least there's people at the games. If you're a top level recruit, I understand. I understand the lore of the U and the history of the U, but if you look at Miami right now, like look at the environment behind me. You can't get this in Miami. You can get this in Knoxville. You can get this in like Lincoln, Nebraska, and Norman, and Athens, Georgia, Tuscaloosa, Columbus. You can't get that in Miami though. Not with that fan base, not with that stadium. And
Yeah,
I don't see Miami being an elite program until they figure out a way to get the fan base there on a consistent basis. Otherwise, I think Miami's best days are beyond them. I don't see. I understand Miami historically back in the 80s and 90s was an amazing program, but think about it. Before the 1980s, Miami did next to nothing in football. I mean, they were irrelevant, and they had a run there in the 80s and 90s where they were really, really good. Early 2000s, but what have they been since? Not that
I mean,
great.
they came close to getting to a college football playoff back, I think, in 2016 when they got when
17.
they lost 17 when they lost to Pitt. That
Yeah.
probably was their best season in the last 10 years.
Right. But even then, Miami that year, they were sliding by teams really close, and they didn't really have that swag. When I think of the U, I think of swag. I think of, oh, I'm scared to see the U. No one's scared to see the U anymore.
Do you think that was because they lost the Orange Bowl? The people who made the decision to tear down. I think if you really think about it, the destruction and rebranding of the Orange Bowl got a lot of bad effects by the state of Florida, especially the Miami area teams, because Miami Hurricanes lost the swag, lost the momentum, probably lost their home crowd environment. Uh, even the football team, the Miami Hurricane, the Miami Dolphins is not a good in the past. Even even the Miami Marlins, they had really good season down in the Orange Bowl. I think they were playing the Orange Bowl when they won their first World Series.
I think that didn't they play in the Dolphin Stadium, like Hard Rock Stadium, before back when it was pro player stadium until they moved into because you got to remember the Miami Stadium for the Marlins is on the side of the old Orange Bowl. So in a way, that's the spiritual successor to the Orange Bowl, and that's been, I thought, in my opinion, a disaster for Miami.
Oh yeah. I agree. I think Orange Bowl was such a marquee. I think even for college football itself, the the Orange Bowl is still a really big bowl game, but it doesn't feel as big it was in the past when there was actually play in the Orange Bowl.
Oh yeah, I mean, Miami is such a pro town too. I mean, you think about the Heat, like with LeBron and Wade, and even in recent years, how good they've been with like Jimmy Butler, and of course the Dolphins this year. Of course they have playing right now. I mean, that's a team that this year so far looks really, really good. So if the Dolphins are rolling, I don't know how the Hurricanes compete with that. So I don't know, rough sledding for Miami. Kind of looking ahead to this weekend's games. What games do you really stand out? Of course, Bama, they travel to Arkansas. That could get pretty interesting. Of course, we talked about Kentucky Ole Miss earlier. One to me that I really like, Wake Forest at Florida State. Wake Forest has an insane offense, but their defense is not very good. But Florida State, I feel like, they're 4-0. They're finally ranked again. This is a huge moment for the Seminoles and for Mike Norvell. I mean, this is huge. If they can win this game, they could really get some momentum going forward. And that could keep Norvell around in Tallahassee for a while.
I think this game is as big probably that was Tennessee Florida last week because Florida State is in the same state as Tennessee was because not in terms of rivalry, but in terms of momentum that you said, because Florida State was also a team like Tennessee that had a really good success in the past, especially late 90s, early 2000s. I know they got the national title win back with James Winston, Well, recently they have been, really bad. They even lost to Jacksonville State. So if they at least stay undefeated, they win over because they're gonna have three consecutive ranked team opponents. No, we got Wake Forest number 22. They can face NC State, which even if they lose to Clemson, they're gonna still remain in the top 25, and then they're gonna play Clemson. So I think this is probably a really big deal. This Wake Forest game in Tallahassee.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. You're absolutely right. Perhaps what about the Darlin too? This one's flying under the radar because it's not ranked. Iowa State at Kansas. Can Kansas get to 5-0? And will they finally be ranked?
Yeah,
I feel
because
like Kansas being so disrespected.
no, and again, I don't understand why Kansas State is ranked when they got one loss, and Kansas is not ranked when they are undefeated. I want to understand that.
And Kansas State's one loss to Tulane.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I mean,
what a
just so
job by Lance,
disrespectful of Kansas.
but what a job by Lance Leopold. I mean, he's right revitalizing a program that was 3-27 in the last 30 games before this
Right.
season.
They haven't had more than 3 wins in a season since like 2009. I mean, it's just remarkable what he's done in Kansas. Because I remember the 2007 season when they won 12 games, but they haven't done anything since. So it's really cool to see them be really good. That last half of the season, though, for Kansas is really, really difficult. I don't know how many games they can win in their final 6 games, but I think they can maybe get to like 7-5 or something like that. And I think
I
that'd
mean,
be a phenomenal season
if
for
they
them.
make a bowl game, that's an upgrade comparing to the last 4 seasons where
Right.
their only a big accomplishment was beating Texas in Lawrence. Because
Right.
probably the highlight of the Kansas football programs in the last 6-7 years was beating Texas back in 2016 and 2021. Probably that was a highlight.
Yeah. So let's listen to the rest of the schedule here for Kansas. So you have Iowa State this week, or TCU next week, at Oklahoma, at Baylor, Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, Texas, and at Kansas State. That's a really hard schedule the rest of the year. You got to find a way to win 2 of those games. I think they can win at least 2 of those games. I think they can maybe win 3 of those to get to 7-5. I don't see them going above that. But if they go on a run there, if they go at least 5-2 in those games, that could put them in a position where you're talking about like a high-end bowl game for Kansas. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think 7-5 probably it should be like 6. Making a bowl game should be already an accomplishment for what they were in the last few seasons, but they should be deserved to be in the top 25. They why in the world Kansas State is in but not Kansas? That's I don't understand.
Yeah. Also, shout out Texas Tech while we're on Big 10, our Big 12 talk. Upset in Texas, and it's the seat getting hot for Steve Sarkisian. I mean, another bad loss for Texas under the Sark era. Even though they took Alabama to the wire, you still didn't win that game. I don't know. It doesn't look great for Steve Sarkisian in Austin.
Yeah, because I guess all the praise, all the all the momentum that they got to get to you know to that Alabama game is now gone. Now all the I think Steve Sarkisian is going to be in the hot seat because Texas. I think everybody was expect them to win like what 8 games this season. I don't know if that happened because now they're 2-2.
Yeah, I don't see that. I mean, they'll have to beat Oklahoma to probably do that. And Oklahoma's suspect. In that game, it's always seems to be 50-50. So the rest of the way for Texas here, you got West Virginia, you got the Oklahoma, you have Iowa State at Oklahoma State, at Kansas State, TCU at Kansas, Baylor. I don't think they're just losing 2 the rest of the way.
No,
If I had to guess, I think they'll beat West Virginia this week 3-2. I think they lose Oklahoma. They beat Iowa State, lose to Oklahoma State and Kansas State, beat TCU. I still going to give them Kansas. They lose to Baylor. I have them going 6-6.
Yeah, 6-6, 7-5 if they might upset Kansas State. But everybody was. I think they're gonna give another year for Sark, especially after getting Archie Manning in recruiting. That probably give more time to Sark, but definitely, everybody was expecting this season to go a little bit better, especially getting Alabama, as I said, to the wire. But this Texas Tech loss definitely, caused a little turmoil down in Austin.
Yeah, I think part of it too is Quinn Ewers getting hurt. I think they wouldn't have lost a game with Quinn Ewers. So if they get him back, that might change the trajectory of their season because he looked incredible in the first quarter against Alabama. So, we'll have to see.
Yeah,
with Texas.
Yeah, another really interesting game next week is in Texas, but Baylor and Oklahoma State.
Oh yeah, this one might be for the Big 12 regular season title. I think these are the two best teams in the Big 12. And really, Oklahoma State is a team that I feel like is flying under the radar a ton. If you look at them for the first 3 weeks, they're putting up insane numbers. If they can go on a run here in Big 12 play, that's a team that could be in the playoff conversation. Remember, last year they were a yard away from potentially being in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of really good college football this weekend. I believe there's 5 different ranked matchups. I guess the last one we should bring up, does Arkansas have any chance at upsetting Alabama Saturday? Because I think, it could be an interesting game, but I don't. There's just something with the Arkansas team right now that's a little off. They struggled with Missouri State, and then they really should have beaten Texas A&M Saturday, but man, they had the fumble at the goal line. They doinked the field goal off the top of the upright. It feels like something's a little off of Arkansas right now.
But Alabama lost those kind of games, on a road environment, because I think Alabama's only true road game was to Kansas, and they did not have a really easy time there. So probably, that could be tough. I think, because, I know Alabama is purely the number 2 team in the country right now, but they only played 3 home games, which was Walk in the Park, Utah State, Louisiana Monroe, and Vandy. So now they're going to have a really tough road environment against a ranked SEC team. So they're going to face the first ranked team in the season and the second road game on the season.
Yeah, so we'll see how Nick Saban has them prepared. Of course, I believe Alabama next 3 weeks is at Arkansas. I think it's home against Miss State, and then the third Saturday in October. Which, hey, if Tennessee beats LSU next week, that could be, the biggest home game in Neyland Stadium, maybe since the late '90s.
I agree. But I think correction. The game before the Vols is Texas A&M. The Jimbo Fisher versus.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The very awaited game that everybody wanted to see happen because of all the preseason drama.
Yeah, and that I think works amazingly well for Tennessee because I think they're going to put out so much emotion in that game. Are they going to be able to get up again for the Vols and Neyland Stadium, especially if we go out and beat LSU next week? We'll talk way more about the LSU game next week. That's going to be a huge game. I don't want to even think about Alabama yet because Tennessee has its own vaunted history with LSU that we need to avenge. But I think at this point, let's get over to the NFL. The Bengals just intercepted Tua, by the way. And Tua has been playing very, very well so far for the first part of this year, but not here. I see Tua. He stepped back to throw and threw it deep, man, into double coverage. What in the world is he doing? But anyway, terrible throw from Tua Tagovailoa. But overall, if you look at week 3 of the NFL, I think my number one takeaway is the Bills are not invincible. They looked invincible for the first 2 weeks, but they came back down to earth in Miami in a big way with that 21-19 defeat. So are the Kansas City Chiefs. Losing to Indianapolis, I did not see that coming at all. 20 to
And
17.
and Patrick Mahomes did not look pleased with his OC. There was a
Oh
little bit
no.
of drama in the sidelines.
Yeah, Eric Bieniemy better watch himself because yeah, you can't upset a star player like that and keep your job in the professional league.
Oh yeah. And so real quick, let's go over our predictions real quick. So we got both right. Browns at the Steelers. It was a little bit ugly game, but I think Jacoby Brissett got the job done. You got wrong. I got the Bears and you got the Texans.
I know I got the Titans wrong, which I'm glad I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Which I'm glad I did.
I yeah, don't count. I was more confident on your team than you were.
For sure. Even though we tried our best to give it away by not scoring at all in the second half, but thankfully the Raiders are worse this year, and Josh McDaniels was a horrifically bad hire for the Las Vegas Raiders.
I mean, it's just sad. Josh McDaniels. It looks like he's gonna be seen as a really great offensive coordinator, but a really bad head coach. That's what he's
Yeah.
turning into.
Yeah, I mean, just in the talent that they have in Las Vegas, there's no reason they should be 0-3. I get that they've had a tough start to the schedule, but they shouldn't be 0-3. I mean,
Yeah,
they should be, yeah.
all the talent, Davante Adams, Derek Carr, they shouldn't.
Yeah, but they are. So we'll see if they're able to respond at all. But in that division, it's going to be really, really difficult. Also, shout out to the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. 38-10 over the are the Jaguars the best team in the AFC South? I'm starting to think they are.
I mean, Trevor Lawrence year 2 looks like a little bit of Joe Burrow's year 2.
It really is. I mean, Urban Meyer definitely was the problem in Jacksonville. Urban Meyer was the problem. I mean, Urban Meyer, based on this first 3 games, should never get another head coaching job in the NFL.
I don't. It's not that I'm trying to defend Urban Meyer, but it's not they only replace Urban Meyer. It's the coach they got in his place. It's a Super Bowl winning coach, and a coach that won a title, that had experience. So Doug Peterson knows how to work with young quarterback. You saw how he developed Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, has not found success in the NFL since he left Doug Peterson. So he knows how to work young and talented quarterbacks.
I mean, that's very true. I mean, Carson Wentz has just not had. I mean, poor Carson Wentz, getting sacked 9 times against Philadelphia. Just not very good at all. But Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence might be a good match made in heaven. I think one of the smart things they're doing is using James Robinson as their main running back. I never understood why they went away from him last year. And I'll be very curious to see what role Travis Etienne gets moving forward for Jacksonville. But that's a good team. That's a very good team. And I think Indianapolis and Tennessee are going to have their challenges getting to them. And, of course, here, the Colts-Titans. This is Colts-Titans week, at least the first one. And it feels like more of a win to keep up with Jacksonville than what it's felt like in previous years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for Jacksonville fans, they're going to enjoy as much as possible, leading the division. But they know they probably are not as good right now as the Titans and the Colts. But they're gonna give up.
I think they're better right now than the Titans or Colts. I mean, they've looked better than the Titans. They just beat the Colts 24-0. The Titans, I can't score in the second half. I mean, I think the Jaguars by far right now are the best team in the AFC South. And honestly, if the trends keep on going this way, I really see Jacksonville that they might win it. So no, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. Because remember, there's always one or two teams every year in the NFL that surprise The thing about the Bengals last year, we're probably at this point saying, "Oh, the Bengals are off to a nice start. Good for them." Yeah, but then they make it to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying the Jaguars are going to do the same thing, but don't be surprised if the Jaguars are making a playoff run at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, in Jacksonville, if they take advantage right now of all the chaos that is happening in Indianapolis and Tennessee and in Nashville, they probably can be a good contender. Again, it looks like Doug Peterson for those 3 games. I know there's still a long season ahead, but the match between Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence looks interesting. But the thing is, their next week's opponent is a tough one. I mean,
That's right. Let's take a look at the week 4 schedule here. So for the first 4 weeks, who is leading between you and me? Because I know we were tied week 1. I think I won by a game in week 2, but I got a feeling you might have won week 3.
I got week 3. I got 10-7 in week 3.
All right, so I think you're now winning straight up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right, let's get into it. Let's see who. So we've got Dolphins Bengals here right now, 7-3, early second quarter. Bengals are driving. Who do we think wins here?
I mean, it's hard to pick a game when it's actually happening. I mean, I mean, I'm gonna go with the Bengals. I know you're probably gonna go too, especially the way they've been playing right now. But
yeah, I agree. I'll say this too: the Bengals' white uniforms are so fire. I love the whiteout. You need to look up the whiteout somewhere, Gus, because this looks awesome. But you don't see that a lot in the NFL. But in terms of games that are not happening right now, so the first game happening in London, Minnesota and New Orleans. Minnesota, they've looked good against not great teams. New Orleans, to me, is kind of falling apart.
Yeah, and in this, in this neutral side game, probably, the Saints, is of course it was like the Saints are definitely on the rebuild. The only one win was that comeback versus the Falcons. They lost to Tampa and the Panthers. So give me the Vikings.
I agree. Kirk Cousins will go crazy because Kirk Cousins likes playing against bad teams. So I agree with you with the Vikings.
And it's not a prime time game. That makes even happier for Kirk Cousins.
Yep. All right. What's next up?
Back to the States. Atlanta Falcons hosting the Cleveland Browns.
Ooh, this is Atlanta to me has, I think, played a lot better than I thought they would, especially offensively. Cleveland, though, if it wasn't for them imploding against New York, they should be undefeated right now. So I think Cleveland's a better team, but I think it'll be a good game. I think Cleveland wins by like 10 to 14 points.
Give me the Falcons. I think they can. Those were you said it. Cleveland play really good versus better teams, but then they kind of have a toe on worse teams. So give me the Falcons.
Mm-hmm. What is up?
Commanders versus the Cowboys. I mean, I'm surprised by last Monday's performance by the Cowboys, especially being without Dak Prescott. So
yeah, Cooper Rush has been really good and a relief. Could he be playing himself into a starting job somewhere?
Yeah, because Cooper Rush has not. I remember the season that Dak got injured. He didn't play awful. I mean, he wasn't great quarterback, but I think he did a decent job. He might be on the same category, let's say, as Marcus Mariota, Teddy Bridgewater, those kind of really good backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be enough to beat Washington. Washington is just a disaster, especially their offensive line. I don't know how they beat Jacksonville week 1. Cowboys, I think, will roll in this one.
Yeah, give me the Cowboys too. I think they're gonna. I mean, they're gonna put up a fight for the division because it's gonna be a really interesting fight for the NFC East.
Oh yeah.
So
Now give it to me. What's next?
Seahawks versus Lions. That's gonna. I think it's gonna be an ugly game.
Oh, Lions. Easy. I think Lions win by multiple scores.
Yeah, I think is the kind of game that Lions fans are gonna be really excited about. They're gonna talk about a lot. So I think give me the Lions. I think you know this. I mean, this game should be a really kind of like a good, especially for Jared Goff. So hold on, let me write it down. So okay, Lions. Next is your Tennessee Titans versus the Jason Warwick Indianapolis Colts in Lucas Oil Stadium.
And I think this one's a toss up. It really comes down to, I think, which running back takes over. Is it going to be Jonathan Taylor, who really the last 2 weeks has not been great? Um, Granted, I think teams are really like keying in on him. So I think it's up to Matt Ryan to really free him up. And then on the other end, Derek Henry, can he get going? I mean, he looked really good in the first half on Sunday, but they just didn't do anything with him in the second half. With it being an Indy right now, I guess I would trust the Colts in a very tight one, but I could see this one going either way.
Who you got?
I'm going to take Indy, just barely, though. In
I'm
this game where Nashville, I would take Tennessee, but
I'm taking
since
the
it's in Indy,
Titans.
I'll take the Colts.
I'm taking the Titans again. I'm
Let's
taking the
go.
Tennessee Titans.
Hey, if
I
we
mean,
have to do this every week, I'll do it. I'll pick against the Titans, you pick them, and then if that's this one's formula, we'll just have to do that every single week.
yeah, if the Titans wins again, you're gonna bet against the Titans all season. I'll bet the Tennessee Titans, and we keep it rolling. But
Yeah, hey,
so
maybe the lucky charm.
yeah, might be. So now we got the Chicago Bears going to New York to face the Giants.
This will be a terrible game. This will be a horrible game.
I think this game is gonna define Daniel Jones' time as New York's quarterback. I think this is it. If 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 the Giants lose this game, especially badly, I think Daniel Jones is done as a New York quarterback.
I agree. I think he's going to be done. Give me Chicago. I mean, Justin Fields has not been very good, but I don't trust the Giants.
Because
I
again,
don't trust the Bears either, but I think the Bears are slightly better.
but the thing is, there was a lot of expectations for less, games such as Monday night game, 2-0. They lost to Cooper Rush led Cowboys. So now they're gonna face the Bears, which, is Justin Fields haven't proved to be still a really good quarterback or not. But Daniel Jones' time is running out. I think if the Giants win, he might survive a couple of weeks. But if he loses, I think they're gonna, maybe trade for a really good backup quarterback, and then. But I think but they're not gonna tank because they're 2-1. I think at this point it's hard to tank.
No, if you lose a lot in a row from here, you could definitely tank. Like if they're like 2-6, 2-7, they could tank from there. So I don't know, but we'll have to see. But I'm going with the Bears in this one.
Yeah, I'm going with the Bears too. So this game is interesting. It's going to be a really good one. The Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Doug Peterson coming back to Philly, and Eagles undefeated versus, we just say the Jaguars might be, fighting for a division. I think this is going to be one of the best games in this week.
It really is, and I'll be very curious. I think we'll really find out truly how good the Jacksonville Jaguars are this week. I think the Philadelphia Eagles right now, that they might be the best team in the NFL. I mean, outside of Buffalo, outside of Kansas City, but so far they've dominated And Jalen Hurts looks really, really good. That defense looks really, really good. I'll go with Philadelphia here, but I go with them maybe by like 10 points.
I'm gonna go with Jacksonville because of one of the called the X law that never fails. The X law is like in Brazil we say when a former player plays or a former coach plays against their team they used to coach or used to play, they always beat them. So give me the Jags.
Well, what about Russell Wilson though? Russell Wilson didn't beat Seattle.
Yeah. Oh, I guess the X law in US is not very is not happy because I'd also Baker Mayfield Panthers didn't beat the Browns. So I guess the X law in US, yeah, it's not. Yeah, the X law in US is not as strong as in Brazil.
Yeah, it's not. I don't feel like it's as applicable, but
give me the
I
Jags.
don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more applicable in college though. Lane Kiffin beat Tennessee last year. Sonny Dykes this week with TCU beat SMU. So,
and
in some cases it works.
Yeah, that's true. In some cases it works. I guess college football and Brazilian soccer, I guess in this matter is more closer. So the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the New York Jets. Oh,
Now that's going to be a horrible game too.
yeah.
Who's worried? I mean, Zach Wilson's supposed to be back, so all the moms of Pittsburgh better watch out. But I guess Pittsburgh. They have the more complete team, but man, when is Kenny Pickett gonna get a shot to start? I really hope he gets a chance to start at some point. And Mitchell Trubisky's just wasting everyone's time starting in Pittsburgh.
But the Pittsburgh, they're not gonna rush. They only if Trubisky by the end of the season is not because again Pittsburgh has never had a losing record, so they want to keep that up. But I don't know, but you don't want to rush with Kenny Pickett because I know a lot of expectations. He's a Pitt guy. He played in University of Pittsburgh. There's a lot of expectation, but you don't want to rush, putting on the field and then he doesn't deliver.
Oh, I'm muted. That's true, but at the same time, is Mike Tomlin getting to the point where he's on a hot seat?
Yeah,
like is he going to get desperate?
That's true. It all depends if Mike Tomlin never having a losing record, is in jeopardy. That's I think the only way.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting.
So next game probably is going to be the game of the week. The 2-1 Baltimore Ravens playing the 2-1, hosting the 2-1 Buffalo Bills. I mean, Lamar Jackson this season is ridiculous. He has more touchdowns than probably half of the league. Touchdown throw.
Yeah. I mean, I think this one's going to be pretty high scoring, but I think the Bills, for whatever reason, they were super off on Sunday in Miami. I think they'll come back with a vengeance here. Give me Buffalo. I'm not impressed with Baltimore's defense, and give me the Bills.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. Give me the Bills because I think they were so off last week. I think they're gonna go full speed. I mean, it's hard, and they're gonna go back-to-back road games, and with now the sunny and heated Florida, now they're gonna go all the way to Maryland, which is probably gonna be more chilly.
Yeah. So I think too that was a factor for Buffalo as well, the weather.
Yeah.
All right. I believe next one up is Chargers at Texans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chargers right now, they're hurting bad, but I think the cure for all the L's you is Houston. Give me the Chargers. I think just depending on Herbert's health, I think they'll play a lot better and get their second win of the year.
But who you got?
Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, me too. Chargers. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Texans. They're gonna have an awful season.
Yeah, I think that they're going to have to replace Davis Mills at the end of the year. He's just not. He had a moment there last year where he looked like he could have been a guy, but it's just not working this year.
Yeah.
For Davis Mills. All right, up next, Cardinals Panthers. This one's interesting. The Panthers are a 1.5 favorites here, which I don't understand. I think that Arizona is a much better team. I think Kyler Murray will be the best player on the field. Give me Arizona to pull off the win in Charlotte.
So you got, and I got the Cardinals too. Even though they should have been better, especially with the Kyler Murray's contract. But give me the Cards.
Mm-hmm. All right. 425, we have Patriots and Packers. Patriots lose Mac Jones. I think that's really going to hurt them significantly here for a while. I don't think they're going to Green Bay and beating Aaron Rodgers without Mac Jones. Give me Green Bay.
Yeah, Green Bay is on they got a really good win versus the former Tom Brady's versus Tom Brady's team. So now the former Tom Brady's team, I think they're gonna go 3-1. Yeah, so give me the Packers as well.
Yeah, Broncos at Raiders. Raiders are a 2.5-point favorite here, even though they're 0-3. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. I think that just shows how people are not believing in the Broncos offense right now. But the Broncos defense is really good. I'm going to go Broncos. I know they're the underdogs here technically, but I think Josh McDaniels is just an abject failure as a head coach. And even though Nathaniel Hackett's not much better, at least the Broncos are starting to find ways to win games. So, and that has to count for something.
Yeah, and it takes time. I know Nathaniel Hackett is probably not, is not pleasing the Broncos fans, especially with all the expectations because of the good defense and getting a really good quarterback. But I think they're getting used to it. I think they're going to win the division because it seems that, the Raiders are in turmoil. Even the Chiefs is in turmoil. And the Chargers doesn't seem quite right yet. So give me the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos are in a pretty good spot. So, I mean, all things considering. All right, Sunday night, Chiefs and Buccaneers. I'm not sure where this is going to be played because I know, obviously, they have to assess what happened with the damage in Tampa. I have a feeling they might be able to play this in Tampa, although they may have to play it in Miami. But I think the Bucs. I mean, they probably have had other stuff in their mind all week. If we're being honest, I think this one sets up for the Chiefs to come in and win. That's because I think of the circumstance.
It's a rematch of the 2021 Super Bowl, even the same stadium, or at least was the schedule. We'll see what happens. But I think the Chiefs, with all that, not having all the, issues off the field, probably more favorite. But give me the Bucs. I think they're gonna go 3-1, even though with all the Brady turmoil off the field, he played really well versus the Packers. So give me the Bucs.
I mean, also too, what could happen is the Bucs come out with an extra chip on their shoulder to kind of play for the region that just got devastated over this past week. So they could come out and, obviously a win would be amazing, at least for them, just to kind of, because I imagine there's a lot of Bucs fans who got significantly affected.
Yeah,
by the hurricane this week.
Yeah, it will be kind of like, in kind of giving some joy for the people who had a lot to lose.
Absolutely. So we'll have to see what happens with that game. Monday night, Rams and Niners. Niners, Jimmy Garoppolo, man, running out of the back of the end zone for your own safety. I mean, how does that happen? How does
Yeah.
that happen?
There was
It's,
even a quarterback who got thrilled because he made the same mistake in the past.
yeah, Dan Orlovsky did that with the Lions back in 2008 when they went 0-16. So just that offense is just not good without. It's just not good with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think the Rams, after getting embarrassed open tonight, they're starting to figure some things out, especially on defense. If they can get their offense going, they'll be back to where they were last year. I like LA, the Rams, to win this game.
Yeah, I don't know. If there's a coach who's like a kryptonite for Sean McVay, is the 49ers coach, is the way they play. They always give a hard time. Even in the NFC Championship, it was kind of like a comeback for the Rams. So give me the 49ers.
The 49ers did win this game 31-7 last year in San Francisco on Monday Night Football, so that
Yeah,
very well could happen.
yeah, because I forgot his name. 49, the 49ers coach.
Kyle Shanahan.
Kyle Shanahan always gives trouble. If there's one coach who can always give trouble, it's like a kryptonite for Sean McVay, is Kyle Shanahan.
Right. You never got a point there. It's definitely going to be an interesting week of football. I'd probably say the best game to me is going to be that Bills-Ravens game. I think that's going to be an absolute barn burner. I mean, of course, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson going back and forth should be highly entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I think I like this. The predict best game and worst game. Best game, I think, is going to be the Bills and Ravens, but definitely the worst game is going to be Bears and Giants.
I think Steelers is going to be worse, at least with Bears Giants. Yeah, like we have teams with a lot to lose, especially Daniel Jones has a lot to lose in that game. Jets Steelers, I feel like those two teams are destined to be really, really bad.
Yeah.
So at least
So
that's the one that at least interests me.
So I think it's going to be interesting week of NFL, especially. I think after this week we're going to see who is in the top, because that Bills, Ravens, and Rams and 49ers. I think whoever wins this game is going to be probably the top 4 or even leading the NFL power ranks.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. Are we ready to talk a little bit of baseball here? Just for a moment.
Wow. I mean, Aaron Judge, what a season. 61 home runs. He's making history.
Yeah, I just wish they would stop interrupting college football to show every at bat of his. I mean, like, if I want to watch Aaron Judge hit, I'd watch the Yankees game. I don't need to watch Aaron Judge when I'm trying to watch Clemson Wake Forest.
So I guess for me that is not in the state. So I guess there was ESPN broadcast of a college football that was keep being interrupted by Aaron Judge at bats.
Yeah, they were interrupting both Clemson Wake Forest and Missouri Auburn. Like, it was insane. Like, I've never seen them do something like that before.
I think they didn't want to lose the moment, and they want to kind of promote that because ESPN still owns the Sunday Night Baseball and postseason games, but baseball and football fans are very different demographics. Like, you can be a football and a baseball fan, but I guess the hardcore football fan is not interested in baseball. Let's be real.
I mean, there's some overlap, but for the Yankees,
Yeah.
it's just that college football is primarily a Southern and Midwestern sport. MLB is most popular in the Northeast. Like, it's just the regional overlap is not there, especially for the Yankees.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably they didn't want to lose the moment, but you have to see the atmosphere, and you mentioned though, but all four teams that were involved in those games, they were from the South or even the Midwest. None were from the Northeast.
Yeah, like I don't know if they did interruptions during the Cowboys Giants game, but that would make sense because the Giants, it's a New York team.
Yeah,
So it makes sense to interrupt that. Or like I know like there was one game on ESPN Plus the time Rutgers and Temple that they weren't interrupting, but that game would have made sense because Rutgers is in the New York suburbs in New Jersey. So that would have made sense, but not for games involving ACC or SEC teams in the South. Just it doesn't make sense. But I mean, I think that's just a problem with ESPN. They're so heavily biased towards the East Coast teams because that's where they're from, right? Bristol, Connecticut. They're in between Boston and New York, and that's the teams they're going to cover. And other regions get kind of left behind because of that.
and especially they want to get the moment because ESPN lives for highlights, live for separate moments. So if because their mentality is like, oh, our viewers like sports, so they cannot miss a big moment happening in baseball, even though they're watching football. That's their mentality.
Breaking news, Gus. I think Tua just went down. Tua
Ooh,
Tagovailoa just got hurt again. It was like I couldn't tell what. Hold on, I'm going to rewind that a second. I need to look at this again. In fact, I don't know if we'll get booted off if I like show this on the side. I'll have to take off my
the
virtual background here for a second. So you take a look at this, so you can see this Tua right here, right?
yeah.
So all right, this is the replay right here. So
Ooh,
yeah. So that literally just happened in the game in Cincinnati between Miami and the Bengals. So, man, what a tough break. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa, he's battled through a ton of injuries, but I don't know how many more he can battle through.
yeah. If he got injured again, do you think the Dolphins are gonna have the patience, or are they gonna, want to find because they there was a lot of controversy even the moment he was drafted. A lot
Oh,
of
for sure. Yeah. NFL teams, they're only going to have so much patience for so long. It's just the name of the game. And clearly, you got to remember, Tua, he got hurt last week. So it feels like this was re-aggravating what happened last week. Because remember, it looked like he had tripped himself up and his knee got hurt last week. And I think what just happened was that injury got exaggerated. So yeah, it's not often we get breaking news while like literally in the game while we're on the pod, but yeah, wow, that's huge for the direction of the season. Because I'm trying to think who's even the backup for who's even the Dolphins backup right now. Let's check. Let's see the roster. I don't know Teddy Bridgewater, so it's about to be Teddy Bridgewater season, I think.
Yeah, probably. And the Dolphins, front office and coaching staff kind of got Bridgewater as an insurance policy because they knew Tua is an injury-prone player.
Yeah, he's still down in the field, so they just come back from Cincinnati. In fact, let me get my remote here. I'm going to turn up Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit here, see what they're saying.
Oh,
real quick.
Cool.
Let's see. Back of his head. Well, they actually think it might be more of a concussion. Okay, they're bringing the stretcher out. This might be a neck injury, actually. So I don't know if this is related to what happened to him last week.
But still, it's concerning, It's it's not like
Yeah,
a
see, so right, I'll have to turn off my background here again. Yeah, so they've got the stretcher here. The whole Miami team is out here. So this is just a terrible situation there for the Dolphins, unfortunately.
yeah, I know, right? It's and also unfortunate for Tua, promising quarterback, that everybody thought was gonna, you know, come strong in the NFL, and he's like what in year 3, and still, dealing with a lot of injuries, and you know, that's. I hope it's fine. I hope he can come back strong. But back to
Yeah.
baseball, we're talking about New York. I know the Yankees won the division, but the Mets are on a battle versus Atlanta, and both teams are on the playoff. But we still don't know who's gonna win the East. And the thing is, they're gonna face each other this weekend, but we don't know who's gonna be in Atlanta or not, or even if the game's gonna happen because it looks like the forecast for Atlanta is rain all weekend. You're muted.
I'll say I think Saturday they'll have issues, but I think they can get a doubleheader on Sunday. The Hurricanes going to go through the Carolinas. And I think they're not going to have too terrible of effects. I think they can. They can really. I think they can find a way to get this series in. But clearly, I know Major League Baseball wants to make sure this series is played in the best way possible, in the most complete way possible.
Yeah, because it's a series everyone has been waiting for, especially because this is the most heated division battle. That's the only division battle right now. All the other five divisions are concluded. Like the Dodgers won the NL West, the Cardinals won the NL Central, and good for Albert Pujols having probably his last ride in the playoffs. The Astros got the AL West. The Cleveland Guardians, against all odds, won the AL Central. Probably are going to be out by the first round of the playoffs, but still. And what a disappointing! I think Chicago White Sox has the most disappointing season because the last 2 seasons they were, in the playoffs, going strong. And I was reading an article how the Chicago White Sox, even front office and even managerial ways, is all over the place. I don't know if Tony La Russa deserves to stay, but congrats to the Cleveland Guardians winning the Central and the Yankees won the East. So there's only one division battle, and they're gonna face this weekend.
Oh yeah, I mean, if the Braves take 2 or 3, that would mean they would be tied heading into the last week. And I believe if they finish tied, they would have to play a 1-game playoff, right?
Yeah, they're gonna have to play the game 63.
Yeah, that would be insane. Because that would be the difference between getting to take that weekend off and taking and having to play the wild card weekend. So right now, just a bit of an update on the Tua situation. He is currently being carted off. I'm trying to see if there's any movement. It doesn't look like there's really any movement at all from Tua. That's actually kind of concerning. Yeah, he's not moving at all. And the Dolphins definitely seem emotional at the moment. I think I saw it looked like Jalen Waddle had tears in his eyes. So Teddy Bridgewater about to go into the game for Miami. We'll definitely keep you abreast if anything else breaks throughout the rest of this podcast. I don't know if we'll get any other news, but that looks pretty serious for Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that in our next episode. But so the game 632 would have happened on October 6th because that would be the no date game, but probably if the game would have happened, it would be game 633 on and I think they even can play a doubleheader on Sunday because the original game on Sunday is a Sunday night baseball.
Right. So they could absolutely get it in. Definitely, these are going to be some very contentious games. I mean, obviously, more is on the line here for the Mets. The Mets, they've had the lead the entire time. Um, they need to find a way to push this off against the Braves. And of course, the Braves are coming off a defending championship. Like that. There's really no pressure. I feel like for it.
And they got in. They're in the playoffs.
Yeah. So like, I mean, there's no pressure for Atlanta. All the pressure's on New York here. So let's see if the Mets can rise to the moment and finish off the Braves for the division, or will the Braves take the division again from the Mets and put the Mets in a really difficult spot where you're going to have to play next weekend for your life just to get to the division round.
Yeah, I know, right? And the pressure on the fans, like Steve Cohen put a lot of you know investment on this team, and if they lose the division, even if they're still qualified for the playoffs, it's not gonna look it's gonna look very. They're not gonna have the momentum if they lose if they don't win the division.
Right. It's just yeah, I mean, almost at that point, you would have to hope you'd go on a run to win the World Series, or otherwise, I think it would turn into a failure, especially depending on what the Yankees do. If the Yankees go on a run themselves, I think that would make it worse for the Mets.
Yeah. And real quick, also in baseball conversation, yesterday we had the Southern League Championship game down in our beloved Tennessee Smoky Stadium in Kodak. The Smokies face off Pensacola Blue Wolves. They were leading up until the fifth inning, where the Blue Wolves scored 4 runs and kind of solidified their win, 11-4. But still, congratulations! Great season by the Smokies, making the playoffs. I think they haven't made the playoffs like in a decade, but congratulations to the Smokies making to the championship game. But especially congratulations to the Pensacola Blue Wolves winning the Southern League Championship in 2022.
Yeah,
I
Blue
mean,
Wahoo is a great name. The Blue Wahoos. Poor
Blue
Pensacola.
Wahoos, and
Yeah.
I just I was rooting for the Smokies, because I cover a lot of games. I always was treated very nicely there. My before last show on Rockstar Sports was at Smoky Stadium alongside with you,
Mhm.
so a lot of great memories there. So I was cheering for them because I know how great it is to win a championship, but they came up short. They won their first game in Pensacola, but they lost the 2 games they were hosting in Smoky Stadium. But but again, what a great season.
I cannot wait to see Smokies and Lookouts games in their new stadiums here in a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And finishing out with some soccer because I'm gonna talk Brazil, but first the U.S. had some struggling in the last 2 friendly games before the World Cup.
Yeah, Japan. I mean, they lost to Japan 2-0 on Friday, and then I believe it was Tuesday. They could not score against Saudi Arabia, ended up going to a 0-0 draw. Just not very impressive right now for the United States. Um, and it doesn't inspire much confidence. Like it, I mean, I was hoping that I would say the group of 16 would probably be the goal for America in this World Cup, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got knocked out in the group stage.
Yeah, Greg Berhalter is, is not because he had a heated argument with Christian Pulisic in those games. So even though he was the man of the match, returned to the lineup, he still didn't play well. So I don't know how much Greg trusts Christian Pulisic, but I think US should compete for making at least the round of 32, at least making the round of 32.
Yeah, I don't see them go much further than that. Um, I mean, in the group right now, England definitely is beating the U.S., but I feel like Wales right now would beat the U.S. and Iran. I mean, that'd be an interesting game. So I just don't see. Um, especially if we don't see something drastically different in November, which we could. You never know, right? Like the World Cup brings out a lot of different things from these teams. It brings out the best in some teams, and it brings out the worst in some teams. So it's the World Cup is a funny beast. But I remember, when the World Cup bracket came out, my pick was Brazil. So how is Brazil kind of transitioning down to Brazil? How are they getting ready here for?
I got to watch. I got to really watch those friendly games versus Ghana and Tunisia. One thing though, Neymar is, I think, doing great. I think he's playing. He's really focused. I don't know if he can carry this team to win the World Cup, but definitely he is the number 10. He's the leader. But interestingly, I like the way Chite is positioning Neymar. He's not putting Neymar as like a striker. He's more like a midfielder, more like a transition guy, like a. I see Neymar now. He's like the quarterback for Brazil. It's like carry the ball. He makes his teammates better. Great assists. So I think Neymar right now can be. I don't put him in like the striker. I put him like in a fake nine, like a number 10, because I think my team of Brazil right now is Alisson and goal. Then the right back is still a very, there's Militão, even Daniel Alves. I don't know. The defenders, Thiago Silva and Marquinhos, I can establish. The left back, I think Alexandro. On midfield, you got, you know, but I think on the offensive side, uh, that's kind of established. Neymar, Vini Jr., Richarlison, and then there's only one spot between Rafinha and Rodrigo. But I would have put Rafinha. But definitely Richarlison is gonna be the striker. I don't see Vini Jr. also losing his spot. But also I liked Pedro, the Flamengo striker. He scored one goal. He should be in the 26 man roster. He should be in. He's a great reserve, a great backup if TT needs like a something different in the game. So I'm really
Yeah, I mean,
confident.
it's a deep roster for sure. But
Oh,
obviously, I think the linchpin there is Neymar. Like I think the pressure really is all on Neymar here. 'Cause
yeah,
I feel like I think back to 2018. I think about the flopping. People were mocking him for that performance in the 2018 World Cup. I feel like he's got a lot to prove here in 2022.
yeah. Look how many good strikers Brazil called on only on those two friendlies. Like you had Neymar, Rafinha, Richarlison, Vini Jr., Rodrigo, Anthony, Firmino, Cunha, and Pedro. Like loaded, but on defense, that's what worries me because Brazil only had three side players for left and right. And in terms of defenders, I know Marquinhos and Thiago Silva are going to be the starters, but in terms of the backups, there's still question marks. But I think a lot of pressure on Neymar, and even more because he announced his candidate for president of Brazil, and a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people like it. I I respect him. I think at least athletes have the right to you know voice their opinions. He voiced his opinion, and I made a prediction that if because interesting, like a lot of sports journalists, like in America and Brazil, are left wing. So if Neymar wins the World Cup and Neymar's candidate wins, the sports media are gonna, you know, are gonna be very not like they're gonna be a very mixed feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've had situations like that too in America, where like maybe a athlete that's like fairly outspoken wins a title, and now you got to like balance it. Like think about the Braves last year in the World Series, people were criticizing them for the whole tomahawk chop deal, and it's just there's always going to be some sort of controversy around
It's like
champions. It seems like.
like for example, Kyrie Irving. Uh, if he won with the Nets, even though he was anti-vaxxer, a lot of issues. I bet a lot of New Yorkers are not gonna remember that, but
Oh
that
no. Well, I
but
mean, out of the New Yorkers that are Nets fans, I mean, I feel like most New Yorkers are Knicks fans, but the Nets are just kind of there.
But I'm confident, Brazil, of course, again, we have to wait when they face the European country in the quarterfinals because that's where they stumbled the most in the last four World Cups when they faced the European team in the playoffs. They lost to France in the quarterfinals, lost to Netherlands in the quarterfinals, they lost to Germany in the semifinals, but they've only faced South American countries before that in the round of 32 in the quarterfinals, and Belgium in the quarterfinals. So, the game that is going to define Brazil's World Cup is the European quarterfinal game. That's where Brazil should prepare, to be really honest.
All right. Now, a bit of an update on Tua real quick. So, Dolphins are saying that Tua Tagovailoa has been taken to University of Cincinnati Hospital with head and neck injuries. He is conscious, which is good to hear, but still, obviously, it's a very serious situation. Obviously, out for the rest of today's game. Probably going to be out maybe for the rest of the season. We'll have to see what the long-term impacts are for Tua Tagovailoa because you have to think about long-term health impacts, especially for head injuries, like CTE, stuff like that. So it's going to be a long, probably a long road to recovery for for Tua Tagovailoa. Bit of a score update real quick. Cincinnati leads 14-6 now. T. Higgins scored a pretty long touchdown for Joe Burrow, but Dolphins are trying to drive. Update
And
on
I'll
that situation.
update on the Brazilian second division. Vasco and Londrina tied one apiece. Vasco scored with Andre Santos, and Carpini scored for Londrina. So they're tied with a sellout crowd in São Januário. 8 minutes and 40 seconds played in the second half. But speaking of the Brazilian Championship First Division, Palmeiras, even though Palmeiras had missing a lot of players, especially on the defense, they got the win 1-0 versus Atlético Mineiro on the road. For me, Atlético Mineiro played better. They had more opportunities, but Palmeiras always finds a way to score. And it's crazy how Palmeiras defenders scores. Uh, both starters of Palmeiras defenders, Murilo and Gustavo Gomes, both score 18 goals, nine goals each. So it's crazy how Palmeiras is so efficient to score, especially in set pieces, that both defenders score 18 goals this season. So they got the win. They're right now 9 points ahead of second place Fluminense with 10 weeks remaining. They face Botafogo on Monday, 8 p.m. I think this game is a very winnable game. I think they can definitely win this game. But the thing is, I think Palmeiras is going to deal with a lot of injuries and a lot of issues in the roster. But I think they're still favored to win the Brazilian Championship. They're 9 points ahead. The second place, the Internacional tied 0-0 at home. Fluminense got the win 4-0, but it was an easy opponent. But I don't see Fluminense Internacional competing with Palmeiras. It's a matter of time. I think Palmeiras is going to be the champions on week 34. On week 35, actually, week 35 versus Fortaleza at home. So I think I can see them being the champions on week 35 versus Fortaleza at home. And just to finish off, we mentioned Vasco da Gama that was owned by an American group, 77 Partners. Another Brazilian team is close to also being bought by a foreign investment group called Citigroup, the group that owns Manchester City and New York City FC. They're just waiting for the approval of the members council group of Sports Club Bahia, which is very popular in the Northeast, two-time Brazilian champions. And they promise to do a lot of investing, and Bahia is fighting in the second division. They're in third place. I think they're gonna get promoted, even though they fired their coach recently. I think they're still gonna get promoted. But it's interesting to see the foreign investment in Brazilian soccer. We mentioned John Textor, buying Botafogo. 77 Partners bought Vasco, and now Bahia can be bought by the City Group that owns Manchester City and New York City FC.
Yeah, it really is amazing to see. And we talked about this before. I think this could help Brazilian soccer gain the exposure in America that we really need. You know, see,
No,
because I mean, based off the stories you're seeing, and obviously in this case with the Manchester City group, um, just the international exposure, both in the UK, the Middle East. There's a lot of potential for growth there.
No, yeah, and also I like that Brazil soccer is opening up for foreign investment because it can lead to also a different mentality in terms of running clubs. It's like it's more professional. It's a different view. I think Bahia is going to establish themselves probably as like the best team in the Northeast if they got this investment right. Because again, I can see Bahia can be like a New York City FC. A lot of very popular, and and they have the tradition something New York City FC didn't have. And I think it's going to be very good for the Northeast soccer, which has a lot of popularity, has a really big fan base, great fan bases, but they're still not as competitive as the Southeast teams because of the disparity of investment. This can like kind of balance it out. So we'll see um, what's going to be probably in the next few weeks. The deal's going to be done. But I guess you want to go to hot takes, and I was going to mention that what a terrible scene in NASCAR. That was just sad.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, before we get into hot takes, do want to shout out our viewers here, Francisco, both Miguel Ribeiro and Miguel Del Lari. I believe I translate this, and it's
Yeah,
and he was congratulating us on the initiative here for
yeah. He
talking
was
about
he,
both countries.
yeah, he didn't understand. He didn't understand what we're talking about, but he's loving it. He very good interaction of both countries. Great initiative. He works with me in the Brazilian census. We're both happy that tomorrow we're gonna have like we're gonna work from home. So so he's a great work partner. Miguel Ribeiro works in the same radio station than I do. He has a Monday afternoon country music show. Francisco Vetreski, also a friend of mine from Americana. So thank you so much for all watching and commenting on our podcast, Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports.
Yeah, but let's get into the hot takes there. And you're right, Gus. So all year I've been singing the praises of the next gen car. It's produced really, really good racing, and it's done what I thought it would. But unfortunately, it seems like this happens a lot, right? Something seems too good to be true, right? Um, Unfortunately, the flaws are beginning to show for the next gen car, and unfortunately, it's just not very safe. Of course, NASCAR is never going to be completely safe, right? You're racing cars at nearly 200 miles an hour in close quarters. But think about it, ever since the death of Dale Earnhardt, we had virtually eliminated the majority of injuries. Like we have had some insane crashes that have really resulted in not much at all in terms of injury. We have had no fatalities since 2001. But right now, the issue of concussions is really starting to rear its ugly head because Kurt Busch went out a couple of weeks ago at Pocono. Alex Bowman now had a wreck last week at Texas, and it didn't even look that bad. If you just watch the race, he just backed into the wall. There wasn't that much damage even, but he has a concussion. He is out. Same thing with Kurt Busch at Pocono. Um, some other drivers have said they have been banged up, and every driver says some of the hardest hits they've taken are the hits they've taken this year with this car. And I think what the problem is for one of the things they were trying to do with this car is to make it to where it could take more of a beating and still race, which I think it's succeeded in doing. But the problem is, in order to make the car more stiff, I think what they failed to realize in their design is, okay, if you think about it, so like if my right at the, hold on, I'm going to turn off the virtual background here to really do this point. So if this is the wall right here, if this hand's the wall, if this is the car, so in the old cars, what happened is, so if you back it in, so if this is the back of the car, it would crumple up, which would be bad for the car, right? The car would not be able to continue. But because it crumples up, the impact of the crash goes into the back of the car. What happens now is you get a little bit like this. The car itself stays more intact, but when you hit it, and I just feel it myself just doing that, the impact goes through the car, and now the driver absorbs the hit, which was the point of safer barriers of the Hans device to get that impact away from the driver. But the design of this car, unfortunately, has put that impact back on the driver. So now what we have is a very unsafe car. Like it's a car that is causing concussions. It's causing these drivers to be really, really uncomfortable. And now we're going to Talladega this weekend. Gus, I mean, that's the biggest track on the schedule. That's the fast track. There's always crazy crashes at Talladega. This is a bad situation for NASCAR. And they're going to have to figure something out fast, because you can't afford to continue having drivers drop left and right with injuries, or God forbid one of them dies in a crash. And we've got a whole generation without someone dying in NASCAR, and I want to see that continue. But this next gen car has some serious issues they got to fix, especially with hits to the rear. It's not a good situation. And really, that race at Texas, and I've complained about Texas a ton. That was a terrible race. If for anything else, they could not get a tire that worked. I mean, so many guys blew their tires. I mean, it was insane. And especially with this injury concern, it was nerve-wracking, because like any guy could just lose it because his tire went down through no fault of his own. So, I mean, it's definitely put a black curtain in the season, because I felt like for like about the first 25 weeks, this season was great. But about the last 4 to 5 weeks, it's just all gone downhill for NASCAR. And it's just not the end of the season that I think anyone associated with the sport wanted, which is really unfortunate, because there was a lot of great momentum this season, but it's all gone away. Because the moment that safety becomes a concern, you have to prioritize that, even if we have to ruin the racing a little bit, which I think they're going to have to, because these guys' health are priority number one.
Like safety should be on the top priority in not only NASCAR but any race, any competitive race. But I know they want to kind of make the car reusable, but you cannot reuse a life.
Exactly.
Life should be the priority. So I hope like NASCAR, take that more seriously. And so, but in terms of the fight, I was trying to research, like, wasn't like main NASCAR, like what a scene that happened. I even sent you on Instagram.
Which fight were you talking about?
On NASCAR.
Let's see. But did it happen this past weekend? Are you talking about like the William? Oh, let me see. Oh, you shared something.
Yeah, like they throw punches at each other.
This wasn't NASCAR. This was like a late model. I don't know what track that was at.
That was Martinsville Speedway.
Yeah, so that is a NASCAR. But that explains why I hadn't seen that.
Oh yeah, so that was what a fight.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Martinsville 300. So yeah, so it was a late model stock car race. So then that type of stuff happens, in NASCAR, and that's partially why people watch, because it tempers flair in close quarters. But and obviously Talladega, I'm normally really excited for this race. I'm still kind of am, But man, I just hope that everyone makes it all right because it's especially with where we're at right now. It's I don't think the morale of the fan base for NASCAR couldn't be any lower.
Yeah, yeah, I know there's a there's a big issue. Yeah, I know. But my hot take is that the Brazilian Confederation is just I don't understand like they don't make any sense. Like so they did not play any they only play one game on the Brazilian Championship this weekend because the main players are some like the major teams did not have the best players because they were called up for the friendlies of the national teams, but the games were done by Tuesday. So this Wednesday, a lot of the teams did not have their best players yet. So it did not make any sense to had this weekend off, even because on Wednesday did not have their main players. So I don't understand why they kind of like had the games anyway and just deal with not having the players because of a FIFA date. I don't know. I think because Brazilian soccer schedule is so cramped up because of the World Cup in November. And a lot of teams lost momentum, especially like Flamengo's on a good momentum. Now they lost. Atletico Paranaense was a good momentum. They lost. So I don't know. I think it was unnecessary to had this no don't have any games on the weekend and having all the games on Wednesday, even though those players that weren't available on the weekends because they were playing for the national teams still couldn't come back in time on Wednesday.
I think that certainly is a good point. I know you have to get everything you want to get in. And I understand that things are very condensed here because FIFA was stupid, right? Like putting the World Cup into place where you had to play it in November. But still, you got to give your guys breaks, right? Because I mean, even athletes like these soccer players are, and how fit they are, and how much they run and train. I mean, everyone's got to take breaks, right? We're all human. Like the body breaks down,
Yeah.
and I think you gotta balance that.
No, I know, and then the thing is, like, and I know a lot of coaches were happy to have this kind of time off, especially Palmeiras. You see like the way Palmeiras scored was kind of like a something they trained a lot during the week, and it was a good set piece. But I don't know. I just feel like it was unnecessary with because I bet they would prefer to play on the weekend and have all the week off for the next weekend than to have no games on the weekend and now they have to play Wednesday and then on Saturday and Sunday again. I don't know. So
Yeah.
it's just Brazilian Confederation always makes things more confusing than it should be, and also Comebol is just ridiculous. I know I'm gonna give two hot takes in one. They schedule the Copa Sul-Americana final, the second division in terms of South American Championship, on in Argentina in Cordoba, and neither of those teams were from Argentina. I know the venue of the final was chosen even before the teams made it to the finals, but there's no flights available from Sao Paulo to Cordoba, none. The only two are all booked up, and the locals don't even know the finals happening. So it's just you know ridiculous. It's like a small town. They're having also an international conference, like some sort of international conference there. So all the hotels are booked up, and they're not like a major city like Buenos Aires, Santiago, or even like Sao Paulo. They don't have a big they don't have a big hospitality like or hotels room. So
Is
Comebol
it
is
like a
just
Knoxville or Chattanooga?
it's like a yeah, like a Knoxville. Let me see, but I think it's like Knoxville and Chattanooga. Yeah, let me see. It's like 1 million, 1.5 million population, the metro area. So
More like
it's
Nashville, not like
yeah,
more
it's
like a Nashville.
more like a Nashville. But it's like if Nashville hosts like the Democratic, like some sort of like a international conference, and there's like a soccer game, but the both teams are from the West Coast and there's no flights available.
Right. Of course, Nashville would be able to handle that, but it sounds like this city is not able to.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I never been to Cordoba, but it's gonna be so they're expecting like 40,000 fans. I doubt it's gonna have that. It's gonna have more like a 15, 18,000 fans. Heavy majority Sao Paulo fans, because you know how fans are. They do anything to watch their team. They spend all the money they even don't have. But it's sad because I wish it was like in Buenos Aires or even in Brazil, like home and home. But that's the way Commonwealth run things, and it's going to be an interesting game on Saturday. I think São Paulo is going to win. I think São Paulo is going to be the champions, but we'll see what happens this weekend.
Some cool architecture. I'm looking up Cordoba right now on the Wikipedias, and it looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, and their stadium is really pretty. Mario Alberto Kemp Stadium. It's like a really big stadium. It's like 60,000 fans capacity. Like the stadium they're gonna play is really pretty. It's 57,000 fans. The stadium is nice. The city is nice. It's just it was a lot of worries about the capacity of hotels and and flights to get there, especially with a lot of issues.
Right. All right.
But that's it for Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports episode 43.
Yeah, episode 43. We're 6 away from 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something for the 50th episode.
That's true. I'll try to get like a special guest or like something special, or even do the show from like a stadium.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. But I don't know when that will be. But we've almost done it a full year too. So because I know we started after the Ole Miss game last year, so we're getting close.
But that's for Gus Tomazeli here in Americana, São Paulo, Brazil, and Nicholas Hill in beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee. Thanks for listening and watching us, and see you next time.
What's up? So yes, y'all. We never stop, we never rest, y'all.